The Iceberg Hermit, Chapter 3. Alan passed another miserable night, though it wasn't quite as bad as the night before. Lying on the bottom of the trench and sheltered from the wind, he was able to catch catnaps of half an hour or so before the cold got through to his feet, or the hard ice he was lying on proved too uncomfortable. Then he would sit up, rearrange his canvas blankets, and try to fold his body in such a way as to get warm and comfortable again. When dawn finally woke him for the last time, he got to his feet and folded and set aside the 2 pieces of sailcloth. Then he began swinging his arms around his body to get warm. After that he was ready to start hacking at the ice again. He had to get into that cabin. So far the weather had not been too cold, but if a bad storm came along, with freezing temperatures, he might not be able to survive another night without shelter of some kind. His third or fourth awkward blow with the anchor tip hit a piece of framing wood around the captain's window. Alan set aside the anchor, took up the lance and jabbed away until he had uncovered the top of the window. He had been afraid that the window would be too small to crawl through. If that happened, then he had no tools that could cut the tough oak planks of the ship's stern and enlarge the window frame. But fortunately the window was large enough to crawl through easily. Another half hour of hard work and he had cleared the ice away from the rest of the window. He broke out all the glass with the lance and then crawled through. Once inside the cabin, he had to wait for a few minutes until his eyes got used to the darkness. Since the ship was upside down, Alan was now walking on the cabin ceiling. When he recovered his eyesight, he saw that everything on the floor of the cabin lay strewn on the ceiling. Alan picked his way over the jumbled mass of clothes and papers and dishes and found the captain's private bread locker. Inside the locker there were several large tin boxes. He dragged one out, turned it right side up and lifted the lid. The box was jammed full of special biscuits that the captain was particularly fond of. Alan grabbed a handful, found a chair and set it on its legs, and sat down to enjoy his first bite of food in almost 2 days. He bit into a biscuit, crammed it into his mouth, then groaned with pleasure. He had never eaten anything that tasted so good. Slowly, enjoying every bite, he ate about 2 dozen of the biscuits and blessed old Captain Hughes for having a sweet tooth. One thing that surprised Alan was that the biscuits were dry. He opened 2 more of the tin boxes, and they too were dry inside. As he explored the cabin, he found that although many things, especially clothes, were wet, other articles in boxes and closets were dry, which meant that the ship could not have been underwater very long, perhaps only 10 minutes or so. It was almost dark when the ship went down, so that Alan could not know when the Ann Forbes came to the surface again. The ship, turned turtle, must have been there on the edge of the ice all night, although Alan did not find the upturned keel until morning. Much later Alan discovered that the ship had been turned over and forced to the surface by a sloping underwater ledge of ice that acted like a ramp or shovel. The ice field was drifting north with the current, and the Ann Forbes, caught between the force of the ice field and the opposing ice flows, had swiftly been worked to the surface. The biscuits made Alan thirsty again, and he searched through the cabin for something to drink. He came across a locked cabinet and forced it open with the harpoon head. Inside he found a jumble of broken and empty bottles. Lying on top of all the broken glass was a barrel full of some liquid. He picked through the knives and forks that were scattered over the floor, looking for something that would make a hole. He finally found a corkscrew and with it drilled through the top of the barrel. Then he lifted the barrel onto the chair, tilted it over on its side and spilled some of the liquid into a pewter mug that he had picked up from the floor. He took a drink of the brownish liquid and nearly choked. It was either brandy or rum. He was not used to the taste of alcohol and could not tell the difference. He didn't like the taste, but he managed to get down several long swallows of the stuff, for he knew that the liquor would soon warm him up inside. Then Alan went sorting through the stuff in the captain's cabin and found many useful articles, including a large carving knife. He'd hoped to locate the captain's spyglass, but he could not find it anywhere. Perhaps the captain had it with him up on deck when the ship struck the iceberg. If so, the telescope was no doubt lost. It did find a boat hook and the captain's speaking trumpet, a sort of handheld loudspeaker. He also found many of the captain's clothes. They were nearly all wet and were half frozen, but Alan knew that he would find a use for everything later on. After a while the strong drink took effect and he began to feel drowsy. He had slept little the night before and he was exhausted after his hiking over the rough ice and his hours in digging the tunnel to the cabin window. He dragged the captain's mattress into the large clothes closet and piled all the clothes he could find on top of it. The mattress and the clothes were fairly wet, but he did manage to find a few coats and jackets that were halfway dry, and these he piled on top of himself. Then he shut the door of the closet. There was very little space left, but that was a good thing, he knew. The heat of his body would warm the air trapped in the closet and help hold back the cold air outside. Although he was quite tired, Alan did not go to sleep straight away. He actually felt somewhat happy. A sort of miracle had happened. He had shelter, and enough food and water to last for a couple of weeks. Lying there in the clothes closet, Alan thought of his girlfriend Nancy and began to sing Annie Laurie, an old Scottish love song. He finished the song and laughed out loud. He was somewhat drunk. So he was. Alan Gordon of 16 Keith Street, Aberdeen, wished to inform the present company that he felt rather jolly. But he would have to find fire if he wanted to last through the whole winter. Well, so he would. He would have lovely big warm fires, for there was coal on board. There were also a couple of stoves on the Amphibs, and he would find them too. He might as well elect himself captain, he thought. If he had to look after the whole ship by himself, then he ought to be at least a captain. Captain Gordon, he said aloud. Did you hear that, master? We stupid Alan is now a captain. He laughed again. Jump to it, blast ye, he roared inside the closet. When Captain Gordon gives an order, he wants to see nothing but heels flashing up the rigging. But as quickly as his happiness came, it went away again. And soon he felt very sorry for himself. He was all alone in the Arctic seas, the nearest person 1,000 miles away, and there wasn't a soul in the world who knew of his existence. He might as well be dead, for wasn't he already in an icy grave? And he had as little chance of getting out of this grave as he had of getting out of a real grave in the earth. For some reason then, he thought of the fortune teller whose tent he went into the day of the last autumn hiring fair in Aberdeen. At the time he was 16 and had been working as a deckhand on the fishing trawler Queen of Argyll. He sat on a stool inside the dimly lit tent and gave the old gypsy woman a silver 3-penny piece. She lifted his right hand to the top of a small table and began to study it. She felt the hard skin on his palms and noticed that half-dozen scars where fish-cleaning knives had nicked his fingers. You're a lad that works with your hands. You're not a fancy clerk or scholar. I work on a fishing boat. Aye, I thought so. The old woman traced a long line across his palm. You're going to make a big change very soon. You'll change either your work or where you live. And then within a space of 4, you'll start out on a long voyage over deep waters. The water isn't shallow where I go out fishing, Alan pointed out. Aye, but this will be a long voyage, to foreign parts. A strange voyage, full of danger. You will be in great danger, trouble. Beware of a dark man with a twisted face. But you will have friends, a very good friend, a fair lady, will save your life, but will not talk to you. But how can that be? Alan asked. Will this lady friend be deaf and dumb? I know not. I can only tell there will be great love, but no words between you. And then, Alan said, and then you will come home within a space of 7, and you will be very rich indeed, having found a great treasure. Will it be gold? No, not gold, but something of great value. It is hidden from me. My girlfriend, what do you see of her? That line is hard to read, but you will live a long time and have a merry life. Alan asked other questions, but the old woman said she had told him enough, and if he wanted more exact information on whom he was going to marry, then he would have to give her another silver coin. This time, a 6pence. "You must think I'm a great fool," Helen said, and left the tent. It was all a bunch of foolishness anyway. Space of 4 and space of 7 and a fair lady over deep waters. And now, inside the hulk of the Ann Forbes, he thought once again of the fortune teller. Some things had indeed come true. He did change his job and go on a long voyage to foreign parts, and true enough, it was a strange voyage full of danger. But where was the fair lady who would save his life? And how could he ever return from the voyage with a great treasure? He would be lucky indeed if he got back home with his life. "Poor wee Alan Gordon," he said in the darkness of the closet. "Poor wee laddie. You've escaped drowning only to go mad from loneliness in an icy hulk stuck fast to an iceberg." And because of the alcohol working on him, he began to cry and murmur over and over again the names of his loved ones, his mother, Nancy, his sisters, Jean, Flora and Gladys, and still sniffling a bit, he drifted off to sleep. And that's the end of chapter 3 of the Iceberg Hermit. Good night and sleep tight.